Hi soulmates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jacinta. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. In this channel I share sewing and pattern drafting tutorials, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut and sew this Ankara off-shoulder dress with puff sleeve. If it's what you love to learn, kindly watch till the end. If you are yet to subscribe, please click on the subscribe button below and also turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Without wasting much time, let's get started with this tutorial. This is the fabric I'll be making use of. It's an Ankara fabric and I have a total of 4 yards here. Starting off with the pattern drafting, from the tip of my pattern paper, I'll mark 1 inch downwards and square across and label that the shoulder line. From the shoulder line, I'm going to mark 11 inches downwards for my bust line, 14.5 inches for the under bust and 17 inches for the half length. I'll square across and label the lines. On the shoulder line, I'll mark 8 inches, which is half of my shoulder measurement. On that point, I'm going to come downwards by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and mark a basic neckline of 3 inches by 3 inches. I will connect the neckline with my curved ruler and connect the shoulder slope to the neck width with a slanted line. I will mark 2 inches upwards for my bust line and connect the mark to my shoulder slope with a straight line. I will extend the 2 inches line outwards and label that the chest line. I'll mark the midpoint of this straight line. On that midpoint, I'll come in by 1/2 inch. And on the chest line, I'm going to mark part of my bust circumference. Then use my curved ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to the 1/2 inch I came in by to part of my bust circumference on the chest line to form my armhole curve. I'm going to mark half of my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 3.5 inches on the bust line, under bust and the half length, and connect with a straight line. On the half length, I'll mark 1/2 inch on both sides of the dart line and connect it upwards to the bust line like so. Now I'm going to tighten the under bust. At the under bust line, I'm going to mark 1.3 inches on the dart leg towards the side front and 0.75 inches on the dart leg towards the center front. Then I'll go ahead and connect this to my bust point like so. I'll mark the same measurements on the half length and connect it straight down. I'll mark the midpoint of my shoulder and connect from that midpoint to my bust point with a slightly curved line. I'm going to tighten the over bust. To do that, I will mark 3.5 inches upwards from the bust line. On this 3.5 inches mark, I'm going to mark 0.75 inches on both sides of the dart line. Then use my curved ruler to connect it to the bust point like so. So I wanted my neckline to be more higher. I went upwards by 4.3 inches and remarked the over bust tightening. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm trying to reconnect the 0.75 inches. I marked 7 inches downwards from my shoulder for my neck depth and connected it to the 0.75 inches that is on the center front like so. On the armhole side, I came upwards by 3.5 inches from the chest line and connected it to the 0.75 inches on the side front like so. On the armhole curve, I came outwards by 0.75 inches and reconnected the armhole curve. I'm going to mark my side bust dart now. To do that, I'll come downwards by 2 inches from the bust line and connect it to the bust point. I'll mark part of my other round body measurement. At the under bust, I'll mark part of my under bust circumference and I'm going to replace the dart intake I have there. I'll do the same on the waistline. I will mark part of my waist circumference and replace the dart intake. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and connect the marks and cut it out. I'll close my side bust dart like so and reconnect the line. Now for my back pattern, I'll mark 1 inch from the tip of my pattern paper and square across. I'll label that line the shoulder line. I will mark 1 inch inwards from the shoulder to the half length for my zip allowance and connect with a straight line. I will mark 8 inches on the shoulder line, which is half of my shoulder measurement. On that point, I will mark 1 inch downwards for my shoulder slope and 3 inches inwards for my neck width. I'll connect the neck width to my shoulder slope. Placing my tape on the shoulder line, I will mark 11 inches downwards for my bust line and 15 inches for my back half length. and square across. The back half length and the front half length are not the same. To get the back half length, you're going to minus whatever you marked as your side bust dart from the front half length. So my front half length is 17 inches. I minus 2 inches that I marked for my side bust dart from 17 inches to get the back half length of 15 inches. I will mark 1.5 inches upwards from the bust line and connect from the shoulder slope to that 1.5 inches with a straight line. I will also extend that 1.5 inches mark outwards and label that the chest line. I'll mark the midpoint of this straight line. On that midpoint, I'll come in by ½ inch. And on the chest line, I'm going to mark part of my bust circumference. I use my curved ruler to connect from the shoulder slope to the ½ inch I came in by to put on my bust circumference on the chest line. I will mark 3.5 inches on the bust line and on the half length, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement, and connect with a straight line. Placing my tape on the half length, I'll extend the dart line by 6 inches and reconnect. On the half length, I'll mark ½ inch on both sides of the dart line and connect it upwards to the extended dart line. I'll mark the midpoint of my shoulder slant and connect it to the extended dart line. I'll impute quarter of my round body measurement. On the bust line, I'll mark quarter of my bust circumference, and on the half length, I will mark quarter of my waist circumference and replace the 1 inch dart. Afterwards, I'll connect the marks. At the center back, I'm going to mark 8 inches downwards from the shoulder line, and on the side back, which is the armhole side, I'm going to mark 3.5 inches upwards from the chest line and connect it like this. On the half length, I'll come in by ½ inch at the zip side to avoid any form of zipper bulge. I'll also reconnect my zip allowance like so. I will replace the remaining ½ inch at the side front, then go ahead and cut this out. After cutting the pattern, I'm going to cut each of these pattern pieces on my fabric and the lining also. The lower part of this dress has flay and gathers, so I'm going to be cutting the flay part of this dress. So I'm gonna head to fold my fabric into the triangle form like this. Because we are cutting a half flay, I'm going to use the radius of a semicircle, which is 3.14, to get the measurements of this flay. Make sure your fabric is folded like this to get a perfect half flay. And this folded fabric I have here is for the front. First of all, I'm going to divide my waist circumference by 4. The waist circumference I'm working with is 36 inches. Divided by 4, I have 9 inches. 9 inches plus 1 inch for my sewing allowance is 10 inches, right? I'm going to divide 10 inches by 3.14, which is radius of a semicircle. After dividing, whatever it gave me, I'm going to place my tape at the tip of my fabric and mark the answer across the fabric like this. Afterwards, I will take the measurement of that line that I've drawn to make sure it is 10 inches. From the waistline, I'm going to mark 17 inches as the length across like this, okay? The actual length was 16 inches. I added 1 inch because I'll be using ½ inch to join at the upper part and ½ inch to join the gathers at the lower part. So go ahead and impute your desired length and your allowance. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and cut it out. After cutting out the front piece, I'll place it on my folded fabric, leaving 1 inch at the center back, and go ahead and cut out the back piece. I'm going to be cutting out the second layer of the lower part of this dress, which is the gathered part. So it's going to be a straight piece of fabric that I'll gather at the upper part and fold at the bottom part. The length of this straight piece of fabric is 10 inches. I added 2 inches, ½ inch for doing at the upper part and 1.5 inches for folding at the bottom part. Now the width does not have any specific measurement. I made use of the remaining fabric I had. Now for the puff sleeve, you're going to cut out a straight piece of fabric like this in a rectangle shape. The length is about 13 inches and the width is 33 inches. I'll fold the width into 2 equal parts like this. Place the armhole of the upper part on the ends like this and trace it out. This is to ensure that the armhole of my sleeve aligns with the armhole of my dress. I was done cutting the fabric and the lining, and I've also gone ahead to iron my wadding on the front upper part, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is to join these pieces together. I'm going to place the center front and the side front facing front, and join them using ½ inch. I will join the lining the same way and do the same for the back piece. I was done joining and this is what it looks like. What I'm going to do now is to turn the neckline of the front and back with its lining, and to also join the sides of the main fabric and that of the lining. To do that, I'll place the main fabric and the lining together, front facing front, and use my pin to hold it down. Then I'll go over to my machine now and stitch on the neckline and on the two sides. I'll do the same for the back piece. The armhole and the bottom part, that is the half length, will be left open. I was done joining the lining and the main fabric of the upper part, both the front and the back sides, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is to join the flay to this upper part. To do that, I'm going to notch the center of this front upper part, and I'll also notch the center of my front flay. I will place the two notches together, front facing front, and join them at the half length using 1/2 inch. I'm also going to join the back flay to the back piece.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a crazy love moving through me like a wildfire.
I was done joining the flay to the upper part of both the front and the back. What I'm going to do now is to join the sides of the front and back using the allowance we added. Placing the front and back front facing front, I'm going to align the sides of the front and back together and pin it down. I'll mark 1.5 inch on both sides, then go over to my machine and sew on the line that I've marked. I will also double fold the bottom part of this piece of fabric I'll be using for the gathers and gather the upper part. I was done joining the sides of the front and back, and I've also gathered my piece of fabric. What I'm going to do now is to join the gathers to the hem of my flay. Now for my sleeve, I'm going to create a channel to pass the elastic at the upper part of my sleeve. To do that, I'll get a piece of fabric of 1.5 inches wide and join it to the upper part of my sleeve from the front. So I was done joining the piece of fabric at the front upper part of my sleeve. I'm going to double fold it this way and sew on the wrong side of my sleeve. I'm also going to double fold the bottom part of my sleeve because I'll be passing elastic there too. I'm going to be making use of this 1/4 inch elastic. For the upper part of my sleeve, I'm going to cut 6 inches of the elastic, and for the bottom part of my sleeve, I'm going to cut 9 inches. So I'll use my safety pin to insert this elastic in the channels I've created, and I'm going to stitch it on both ends.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a crazy love moving through me like a wildfire. Like a wildfire.
I was done inserting the elastic. I'm going to join the armhole of the sleeve to that of the dress. Placing the sleeve and the dress front facing front, I am going to align the armholes of the sleeve and that of the dress and join them using 1/2 inch.
Bring me into golden sunlight. If I'm going with you, I know we'll get to the other side. Sinking in, I know this feels right. Catching a crazy love.
I was done attaching the sleeve and this is what it looks like. What I'm going to do now is to turn to the wrong side and close the sleeve using 1 inch. I'll also close the zip side and attach my zip. So from the waistline, I'm going to mark 6 inches downwards. So this is where my zip is going to stop, and the remaining part of the zip side, I am going to close it using 1 inch. And that will be all for the cutting and sewing of this dress. If you find this video helpful and you've learned something, please like, share and drop a comment. Also, do not forget to subscribe and turn on your notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thanks for watching and see you guys in my next tutorial.